All right, we've been talking about this for the past few weeks, Ohio's Issue 1, which the attempt there was to try to raise the threshold to amend the state constitution from a simple majority to a 60% requirement. Well, yesterday, Issue 1 failed to pass, with 57% of Ohio voters going against it and 43 voting for it. So, look, that can be disappointing. But despite the loss, there is still a pathway to victory when it comes this November as it relates to stopping a proposed constitutional amendment to legalize abortion up to birth and revoking existing parental consent and notification laws. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Brent Keilen, the Vice President of FRC Action, which is the legislative affiliate of the Family Research Council. Brent, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
Thanks, Jody. Good to be with you today.
Well, thank you so much. All right, listen, let's go to Issue 1. While yesterday's vote, no question, was disappointing to watch as it unfolded, the fight is not over. Isn't that correct? What did we learn from the turnout yesterday and the whole thing? What is kind of the bottom line from your perspective?
Jody, I think you're exactly right. It was a disappointing defeat for the people who wanted to protect parental rights and for the pro-life community. But also, like you said, this is absolutely not over. I mean, the big question, the big outcome is going to be what happens in November. And what can we learn from the result yesterday? I think there's a couple important things for us to keep in mind on this. Number one is 538 put out some interesting info looking back over the past probably 6 years. The states around the country that have tried to do similar things, raising the threshold to amend their state constitution. This has been attempted 5 times. Only one of those actually passed. In the place it passed very narrowly, 51 to 49%, and it was actually pretty narrow in scope. I think it only affected tax increases. So the fact that this was defeated yesterday, 43 to 57%, while again, a setback, disappointing result, is actually pretty par for the course. It is hard to get these things to pass when you want to change that threshold. I think the other thing we have to remember with this is not necessarily a reflection on people's position on the November vote. What we were looking at yesterday was an increase in the threshold for the Constitution on any issue. So you could have Ohio voters who maybe take the pro-parent, pro-life position, but are saying, when I look at all the issues, I actually think the threshold is good at 50%, and then I'll just vote, my position come November. So that may or may not be the case, but I think we have to remember this is not necessarily indicative of where people stand on the vote in November.
Good points there. And, I think it's also important for us to understand, and this is one reason we've been dealing so much with this issue for the last couple of weeks, is what's happening in Ohio, what has happened yesterday, is not exclusive just to Ohio, and it's not just about the pro-life movement there. This is a sampling of an attack that could spread across the entire country. Isn't that right?
It is so true. Judy, in my home state of Michigan, there was a very similar measure on the ballot in 2022, and unfortunately that passed. Now they're in Ohio, but they're looking at other states. We know of a couple for sure in 2024. I think New York is one, Maryland is one, where they're going to be pushing similar amendments, but there's a whole list of other states potentially in 2024. They're trying to do this in. So this is not something just affecting Ohio. This is a national strategy, and everybody wants to talk about this just in terms of the abortion issue. There's a lot of implications there. If this were to pass, it would effectively, pave the way for abortion up until the moment of birth, which is really sad. But it also is devastating to parental rights. It covers such a wide variety of issues. It's important for us to be aware of everything this entails.
Okay, so let's go back to Ohio. What needs to happen between now and November?
When I take a look at my home state of Michigan, what happened last November, what was really eye-opening and sad was that in surveys after the vote, there were a lot of churches and pastors that actually said they didn't even know this measure was on the ballot, or if they did, they didn't know what they were actually voting on. They didn't know what it all included. And I think we can take a lot of lessons from that. The outcome is still very much up for grabs. This is not something where this is set. It's going to come down to who gets their message out. There's a couple months to do it. If you're in Ohio, you could say, hey, let's assume the vote yesterday does indicate people's position on the November vote. That means you've got a couple months to swing 7% of the vote. If you're at 43 now, you need to get to 50. And so I think you can't say this is a defeat. You have to say, you know what, this didn't go the way I wanted, but we could absolutely win the November vote, which is what really, really matters. So I think now is the time to pray, to unite, and really roll up our sleeves and get to work on that vote in November.
Well, Brent, I want to thank you so much for joining us and giving us this insight. And I want to leave this segment just by saying to all of those pastors, those workers in Ohio that gave so much effort to this. Listen, I can just say at FRC today, we prayed for you. And we're asking God to keep you energized and focused and hopeful as we're coming to what's happening in November. And we are all behind you. We're believing the favor of God and the goodness of God is going to rest upon each of you. Brent Keilen, thank you for joining us this evening on Washington Watch. We appreciate it.